Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 29th of April 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth on a bit of a miserable day, Brian.
Yes, it is rainy and very wet outside, grey, gloomy. So there we are, we had the sunshine, that was probably summer.
I think we're going to get Arctic blast over the bank holiday weekend. That'd be nice.
There was a rumour. We'll try and confirm this or not. And we've got some new viewers, I think, today.
We do, yes. Welcome to new viewers and subscribers. And just a reminder, we have the chat box where there are many people interacting and chatting about the things that we are covering, and also the forums which have vital information on right across the spectrum, basically. So please have a look in our forums section on the website. So I think I'm going first, am I not?
I think you're leading off with Mr. Clifford. Mr.
Clifford, yes. Well, the mainstream aren't wasting any time at all in slurring Max Clifford. In this Mirror article, they report that Clifford manipulated the truth, that he was living a lie at home. They also say that Clifford admitted to having 4 mistresses. And apparently Max Clifford also boasted at a talk for the Oxford Union that every day, week and month, a lot of what is written in the newspapers and magazines were actually his stories. And I had a little look at some of the things he's been up to over the years, and I found on Patrick Henningson's 21st Century Wire an article on the hidden camera interview that Max Clifford had done with a journalist where he had let slip that he had hidden away sins of Tory MP Alan Clark, and that story surrounded an affair that Mr Alan Clark had with a Valerie Harkess, a wife of a South African judge, and also he had an affair with her daughters. And here's a little excerpt of what Max Clifford said with regarding to Alan Clark. He enjoyed it, that whole thing. Alan Clark loved the whole thing. They loved it, meaning the Harkesses. They made a lot of money out of it. He used them, so they wanted to make money out of it, and he did. And they enjoyed it, and they sold a lot of books over it. The only slightly serious side of it was that he, Alan Clark, actually interfered with those girls from the age of 14 years of age. So really, Max Clifford openly admitting there that he was, you know, Alan Clark was a paedophile, and he was hiding it away.
But it was only slightly serious.
Yes,
so we've got somebody producing news across the spectrum, but this is only slightly serious.
Yeah, I mean, also in that hidden camera interview, and anyone can go and have a look at it on YouTube, just put Max Clifford hidden camera interview. He boasts that all the evidence that he is sitting on, it's him that's hiding it away from the world, and it's only him who knows where all that information is. So let's hope he may spill the beans soon.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch, but of course you've got a breakdown of the actual charges.
Yeah, the charges. So the count 1, which was indecent assault of a 14-year-old, a verdict was not reached. That was back in 1966. That indecent assault claim, and that was of a 14-year-old. Count 2, another indecent assault, this time of an 18-year-old girl back in 1975. For that, he was found not guilty. Count 3 to 6, a 15-year-old was repeatedly abused between the 1977 and 78. He was found guilty. Count 7 to 9, a 19-year-old groped in 1978 in a taxi. He was found not guilty. Count 8, indecent assault of a 20-year-old gymnast back in the 80s. He was found guilty for that. Counts 9 and 10, an indecent assault on a 17-year-old in actually his office. He was found guilty. And count 11, an 18-year-old was assaulted in a nightclub back in 1984, and he was found guilty of that. Now, I'd just like to remind people of who has been calling for justice towards Max Clifford for a many long time, and it is none other than the great Bill Maloney. And as Brian's pointed out here, child abuse campaigner and filmmaker Bill Maloney confronted Max Clifford, and that was back just before the main
start of the trial.
It was the very start of the trial, yep, and Bill was there. And actually Bill came onto my radio show yesterday, and anyone who wants to have a little listen to that, they just need to go to Mixcloud and look up Lou Collins radio show, and they will hear an interview where Bill is naming more names, and mainly surround Cyril Smith and the Liberal Democrats, but if anyone hasn't heard it, it's on Mixcloud.
So it's very interesting, of course, although some of the papers are saying at the moment that the police investigations are now showing that they're not just targeting sort of ordinary celebrities, because Obviously, Max Clifford is more than an ordinary celebrity, but we're still seeing no signs of movement in the police investigations where things head towards the political spectrum. So I know you're going to talk about Cyril Smith in a minute.
Yeah, things will be moving, though. I'm actually going to be seeing Bill this weekend, and there's lots of things happening right now. So more will be coming out soon, and Bill is certain of that. This is only the very, very tip of the iceberg.
So we've got information we believe is going to come out on MPs from all three parties. So obviously we've got Cyril Smith from the Lib Dems, but now we're also getting names from the Tory party and names from Labour as well. Yeah. So obviously, as Bill himself told us in the very early days, those who get involved in paedophilia, it's a very big club. It doesn't matter what your rank in society is. It doesn't matter what your job. No. You're all going to be in the game together. And what's starting to emerge very clearly is, of course, that means it doesn't matter what party you're in.
What I'm going to find interesting over the next coming days is Cameron only released, I don't know if you covered it yesterday because I was doing my show, but Cameron coming out and saying paedophiles be treated the same, people who abuse children be treated the same as terrorists. Yeah. So I wonder if this is going to reflect on the sentencing of Clifford.
Well, we will see what happens, but of course Cameron comes out with these words. He is not pushing for the exposure of the problems in his own party and in Westminster. Big cover-up going on in that.
Yep.
So it's make all the threats, put people under pressure. What are they doing? I don't really know at the moment.
No,
it's going to be interesting to see.
Either.
But Labour, of course, squealing.
Absolutely. Apparently over 30,000 child abusers are getting away with their crimes, according to Labour. The Shadow Home Secretary, Yvonne Cooper, actually addressed Theresa May yesterday in the Commons, and I will just quote what some of the things that she has said. According to the analysis by the House of Commons Library, the drop in conviction as a result is the equivalent of 13,000 more violent offenders, 3,500 more sex offenders, 13,000 more domestic abusers, 700 more child abusers getting away with crimes on your watch, Mrs May. Those are the facts. The number of cases going to court is going down in areas where the recorded crimes are going up. What are you doing about it? You are the Home Secretary. Why will you not act to make sure that victims get the justice they deserve? And Mrs May came back and said, first of all, there is a case that we have seen a higher number of cases of sexual violence being reported, and I think it is good if we are seeing people willing to come forward, willing to report their crimes. In some of these instances, these are historic cases. There has been an upturn in the number of people coming forward as a result of the revelations that taken place, particularly prompted by the issues around Jimmy Savile. But other cases as well mean that we are seeing more people coming forward. So I suggest you go and take a look at the figures again.
Well, we thought it'd be interesting to put this one up alongside because, of course, we've got Harriet Harman, deputy leader of the Labour Party, who was linked into Liberty, which was supporting pro-paedophile organisations. So we've gently said hypocrisy there, but I didn't notice it originally. We've got Chris Bryant there to the left
the
of
underpants man.
Well, he's the man who photographed himself in his underpants looking for gay partners on the internet, but of course he's had a problem with his election agent that was jailed for child pornography. So pretty dirty stuff, and perhaps we'd better bring this man on screen.
Yes, OK. As we mentioned, Bill Maloney, he does mention Cyril Smith a lot yesterday on the show, and the police have now identified 10 new suspects surrounding the children's home in Rochdale, where Mr Smith committed so many of his crimes, and the Chief Constable for Greater Manchester Police, Sir Peter Fay, told a news conference that new victims had come forward and urged anyone with more information to also come forward. So we just basically have to watch this space to see who comes forward and when.
Right. But the good news is that the sheer volume of people coming forward is meaning that it's getting more and more difficult for the police to cover up.
Yeah, there must be some very jittery people around Westminster at the moment.
Yeah. OK, well, Mike, you're going to move us on to the recovery of the economy, or not?
Or not. Yeah, OK, so GDP increased by 0.8% between the last quarter and quarter one of 2014. That's nice, isn't it? That's according to the Office for National Statistics. It's the latest set of lies that are out. Well, maybe it's a bit unfortunate or unfair to call these statistics lies. The numbers, I'm sure, are absolutely correct, but focusing on GDP in this way and ignoring everything else is such a fraud. It tells us nothing about what's going on in the economy. It doesn't tell us about productivity, debt, or the state of the banks. And it should also be noted that these figures, of course, are an estimate. These are not the final figures, a guess maybe. So perhaps it's 0.8%, or maybe it's more, or maybe it's less, or maybe it's none of the above. So as expected, King David was out this morning tweeting about how great these figures are. They show that Britain is coming back, apparently, but there's no room for complacency. But his long-term economic plan, his and Osborne's long-term economic plan, is working. Excellent. Well, I mean, the Conservative Party themselves had to get in on the act as well. Great that British manufacturing is up 1.3% in the first quarter of 2014. That's what they say. But as I've said before, when manufacturing's on its knees, when it's such a small proportion of the economy that the Office for National Statistics doesn't even give it, it isn't even one of their main categories, then a 1.3% growth isn't too hard to meet. And, 1.3% of what is the question? Manufacturing, well, we'll see. But anyway, have a guess at what the main driver was, Brian. If they tried to tell us that it was manufacturing, but in fact it wasn't. What was the main driver, do you think, for these fantastic GDP statistics?
Shelf stacking.
Well, no, you're close. You're surprisingly close. It was actually shopping. Shopping. So 1.5% of growth in shopping for this quarter, and this is really one reason why the long-term economic plan is such a pile of nonsense. Because when shopping grows faster than manufacturing, shopping isn't going to pay off any debt. In fact, shopping is mostly fueled by debt. So this isn't actually going to solve anything. So let's see, what did Ed Balls have to say, do you think? Well, he said David Cameron and George Osborne want to tell people that the cost of living crisis is over, but millions of hardworking people are still feeling no recovery at all. Under this government, wages after inflation are down by over £1,600 a year. On top of this, tax and benefit changes will leave families almost £1,000 a year worse off by the time of the next election. And with business investment still weak, infrastructure output down, and housing demand outstripping housing supply, this is not yet a recovery that is built to last. Well, I can agree with most of that, I suppose. But he then went on to say, Labour's plan will ensure that we earn our way to higher living standards for all, not just for a few at the top, and secure a strong and balanced recovery that is built to last. We will freeze energy bills, reform the banks, cut business rates, get 200,000 new homes built a year, and expand free childcare to make work pay. Really? And where this government has failed on the deficit, we will balance the books in the next Parliament in a fairer way, including by reversing the Tory-led government's £3 billion tax cuts for the top 1% of earners. So nothing but a load of balls there, really, because how's Labour going to deal with the deficit? How are they going to do that? More government cuts, more privatisation. How's that different to the condemn policy that we're seeing at the moment? It's all really a load of rubbish. In fact, there's really only I forgot to mention, of course, while they're crowing about these fantastic GDP figures, let's not forget that GDP per head has fallen by 7%. So we're not only seeing falls in wages, we're also seeing massive productivity falls in this country per head. So as we mentioned, whenever the Office for National Statistics released its annual economic report, the question was, how can GDP per head be falling while GDP as a whole continues to rise? Well, of course, that's a reflection of more low-wage people coming into the country from outside. So that's a reflection of increasing population. So really only one way to sort Britain out, and that's to produce our way out of the mess. We've got to deal with the banks and the banking system as we go, and that means, as I've said many times before, Glass-Steagall style banking separation, dealing with the debt, some form of national credit like the Bradbury Pound. And until one of the so-called political parties understands that, they're really all just singing off the same hymn sheet. Maybe UKIP should pay attention.
Yes, well, we're not getting any response at the moment from UKIP on the Bradbury pound, but we hope that is going to happen. Certainly a lot of grassroots members are well aware of it.
Yeah.
And we will keep pushing. But reports we've had over the last few days from local shopkeepers is a lot of them are feeling the pinch in a very big way, and they're suffering from the rates, the local business rates. So we've got councils continuing to pull money in. Of course, councils not generating money themselves, they're just taking it. We've been getting some very, very interesting information about the vast amounts of public money, hundreds of billions of pounds, which councils, unitary authority, local authorities, county councils have actually got stashed away. So they're pleading poverty to the general public, but in fact vast amounts of public money stashed away in effectively secret parallel accounts.
I went actually out and took the kids out on Saturday shopping, and my nearest town was empty. There wasn't a soul. It was like a ghost town. It was it was eerie, and it is Saturday, isn't it? Yeah. Not a soul. So many shops closed down on the high street. There was nothing. And I mean, I suppose everyone's just internet banking, but you know, shopkeepers certainly aren't doing very well at this time.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to the subject of the BBC, and I'll thank one of our viewers for highlighting this article from The Telegraph. BBC staff take unconscious bias course to encourage more diverse recruitment. And essentially, they're going to be given courses in unconscious bias in a bid to stop them recruiting new employees in their own image. And it's the Director of News, James Harding, who's revealed this. He said the staff have been given training to improve the diversity of new recruits, with targets to increase the representation of ethnic minorities. Presumably that's going to include the Cornish now. But here we are. The unconscious bias training is a face-to-face course over a couple of hours, also used by private companies and the civil service. Now, this is blatant reframing this man's talking about, and I'm going to say I believe that this applied behavioural psychology is the most dangerous thing we face in the country at the moment. We've got ministers not thinking in their right minds as a result of it, civil servants, and of course police, and we've also been seeing more and more the government under Gove targeting the minds of children. Well, this is the man concerned, James Harding, Director of News and Current Affairs. You can have a look for details of him on the BBC website, and I think this is him in his earlier days when he was actually working with the Financial Times. But what interested us, and I'm going to thank the team that pushed this through to me, is if you do a little bit of homework in the text here, it says he worked with the Common Purpose Civil Action Group, and he came up with the idea of Just Do Something Net, an online service dedicated to enabling UK citizens to participate in public service. It links professionals with non-executive positions in local schools, prisons and hospitals, as well as national charities, everybody being linked together. Well, if we're talking about common purpose, then it's appropriate we have a look at Sir David Bell. We remember, of course, he was the man who was driving up the attack on the press under Leveson. Aim was to get the press and media under government control. But here he is as Secretary and Treasurer of Imagine Nations. And I recommend that you go to the website for Imagine Nations and see how this group of entrepreneurs and thought leaders, yes, that's the correct expression, thought leaders, are going to transform the world into a better place. So do have a look at this, because they're pushing the UN's Millennium Development Goals. So this is absolute one world government agenda. And here we've got David Bell, former chairman of trustees for Common Purpose, at the heart of it. Now, we deal in fact, so we can say to you, you can find on the internet this letter. You can get it through cpexposed.com if you can't find it anywhere else. But this is where the BBC was talking about how much they'd use the services of Common Purpose. And if we just put in this block here, Up until 2009, the BBC had spent roughly £158,000 on common purpose training. But actually, if you follow letters through the internet, you'll see that there's some uncertainty by the BBC on the total figure. But this is what interested us. It says there is no business, basically that they haven't provided details about Mr. Harding's involvement with Common Purpose, as this is he does it in a totally private capacity and has nothing to do with his position at the BBC. There is no business reason for the BBC to keep any information about Mr. Harding's involvement with Common Purpose. The only circumstances where there would be records as if there was the potential for a conflict of interest, and they then say, well, there isn't. So here's the BBC saying, well, this is nothing to do with professional work, it's all private. But in this letter here, where people had asked for information about Common Purpose in the BBC, they have this to say: as background, Common Purpose training was provided as a structured exercise to assist senior editorial staff in building partnerships, developing knowledge, experience and contacts in their local area. Staff who attended the course reported that it had been a really useful learning training experience and opened up a huge network of contacts. So it would appear to us that the whole Common Purpose experience is being paid for by the licence payers. This is the use of public money, but when you ask the BBC for details, of course they don't want to talk to you. Well, this is the gentleman, former editor of the Financial Times, and by a sheer coincidence, we've got David Bell, former chairman of Common Purpose Trustees and a former chairman of the Financial Times. So we're just saying that, you know, we're talking about Common Purpose at the moment, but Mr. Harding there apparently working with Common Purpose and as an advisory board member for Common Purpose London. And then we know Common Purpose has earned a minimum of £158,000 as a major supplier of leadership, diversity and professional prejudice training to the BBC. Is it actually going to be Common Purpose that will be removing unconscious bias in the BBC? That's the key question. We'll see whether we can get an answer. Why are we interested in this? Well, these are quotes by people who've attended Common Purpose training, and Susan Rice, the chief executive of Lloyd's TSB Scotland, said there are no easy answers and Common Purpose is no easy ride. It challenges every personal and professional prejudice you have. It's unsettling. It's also the best learning I've ever done. So here she is recognising that Common Purpose is helping strip her prejudices away. So we thought we'd just really make a bit of comment on this. Here we've got the BBC staff having a course in unconscious bias, because you don't want them recruiting people in their own image. That's a bit of an insult, isn't it? If you're working for the BBC at the moment, you are not good enough. You've got to recruit somebody different to you because you're prejudiced. And let's compare that original quote. It challenges every personal and professional prejudice you have. So here's Susan Rice admitting Common Purpose is getting at these prejudices. So these are our questions, really. Who decides that any of the opinions and beliefs someone holds are biased? Who are these people? What are the opinions and beliefs and motives of the people judging the trainees' prejudices? Yeah. Where do they come from? Yeah. What do they believe in? And what psychological techniques are being used in this reframing exercise, and are they safe? And I'm going to guess that we're looking at NLP again. How have people survived in the world without being mentally reframed in this way before? So if anybody thinks this stuff is a joke, let's just remind you of this man, heavily involved with Common Purpose, and he's the information is there on the internet that, of course, he was there at the earliest meetings where Common Purpose was talking about taking control of the meeting. This is Robert Peston.
It is Peston, right, yeah.
I don't recognise Mr. Peston's face. So there we are, trouble afoot in the BBC, but don't worry, because they're going to have their prejudices and bias removed, and they're going to recruit people who are not like them at all. Okay, my prediction is we're going to start to see an increase in mental illness amongst BBC employees. But what have you been finding out, Mike?
Well, yesterday, Common Purpose, in fact, was bragging about how CSC leaders for students had inspired one young lady to make a difference. And this is by someone called Christine Souffrant. In April 2014, she says, 80 students from around the world convened for the CSC Leaders for Students programme in Dubai to discuss the challenge for 2014 and 15. Then the challenge was, what makes a smart city? So as a participant, she says she learned about the growing complexities faced in ensuring sustainable ecosystems, and she found that the core challenge and solution to the problem was creating efficient, innovative cities and exploring the smart city movement that was occurring in countries around the world. And I believe Bristol is to be Britain's first smart city. I think there's another one in Scotland. I can't remember whether it's Glasgow or Edinburgh. I can't remember. But anyway, so she basically decided, having done this course, I'll just quote what she says. That's when I thought of Smart City Weekend, an initiative that brings together industry leaders, governments and students to incubate ideas that generate an impact. And here's the website for the first Smart City Weekend, which starts on the 31st of May 2014 in Dubai. And for the next 5 years, they intend to initiate 2 Smart City Weekends every year across the United Arab Emirates. That's 10 in total, as they count down to the Dubai Expo 2020. And after this, they intend to expand globally to ignite incubation events around the world. So the question is, who is this young lady, Christine? So here she is, and this is what she says. She is an aspiring Haitian-American entrepreneur with 7 years of business management experience, 6 years of international study in over 26 countries, and 2 years of banking and financial expertise. Now, Can you explain this, Brian? How do you do 6 years of international study in over 26 countries?
Well, it's difficult to imagine this is true, isn't it? If you think of the time, and what do you spend? Do you spend one term at one college?
Well, it's 6 years of terms. It's only 18 terms, so you're spending less than one term in each country.
Yeah.
It must also involve a lot of air travel, which can't be good for global warming. So
indeed. Well, hold on, I'm not finished yet, because Christine is a Bill Gates Millennium Scholar and a graduate of Dartmouth College. In 2013, she decided to take a leap of faith and exit corporate America to pursue a master's at Hult International Business School in Dubai, focusing on social entrepreneurship. And within 7 months, she had acquired several influential hats. Apparently, several influential hats, including being managing director of Startup Grind Dubai, a member of the leadership circle of Jumeirah, and Rotaract Club, and the CEO and founder of Vended International, a social enterprise that is now a 2014 poverty alleviation commitment action under the Clinton Global Initiative Network. So this girl is magic.
Absolutely.
She is just, I don't know, what is she?
Dynamic.
Totally. Is she even real? I mean, she looks about 18, and then she's involved with Gates, the Clintons, the Rotary, Common Purpose.
Yeah.
She hasn't got anything left to join, has she?
Well, indeed. Right. So anyone wanting to know a little bit more about CSC leaders, again, I'd bring you back to the to Martin Edwards' articles on the UK column website. Have a look at this one. Multiple paths lead to one world government. And just to take a quick quote from it, CSC Leaders is the renewal of the Duke of Edinburgh's Commonwealth Study Conferences and represents a partnership between the Duke of Edinburgh's Commonwealth Study Conferences and Common Purpose. Very interesting little organisation. Have a read of that article, and just think to yourself how you actually managed to be so absolutely amazing as to have done all the things that she claims to have done in the short time that she's been on the planet.
Yeah, they're asking how old is she? 90 in the chat room.
Well, if she's done
all these things, yeah.
Yes,
Implication
exactly.
is
yes.
She's a lot older than she looks. But we are seeing a lot of these CVs that if you actually think about what these type of people have put on paper, it cannot possibly be true. Even if they spent every hour of every day, they couldn't fulfill all the roles they're doing. So there's something else going on here. Now, one of the attributes that we have constantly come across at the moment in the public sector, and it's also there in the courts, is people not telling the truth. And this is some information It's very interesting, something going on here. I'm not sure what's happening here, but I'll explain this. This is a document relating to Linda Lewis. This is the case in South Wales, where some years ago, a little girl who was seriously ill, she'd been taken to America for treatment. And basically, while she was there, she was effectively kidnapped by Neath Port Talbot Social Services. Now, more and more evidence is emerging as to what went on, and this was sent to us this morning, and it's one of the court documents. And what's being pointed out here, for some reason we've got the sequence has gone wrong on the labelling, so I'll try and explain it. But if we work down from the top of the document, the initial thing is that data is not filled in. So it says on the left there, case number, child number is blank, and there's no name of the child or date of birth. It just says girl. So this form is basically in error. And then if we go down, it says court authorises, and what it's saying is that they've authorised for the recovery of a child who isn't actually named. So this document presumably could be used to grab any child as long as it's a girl. And right, that was the bit at the top. And then if we go down to the bottom, of course, this is a very common thing, that there's actually no signature by the judge. So if you'd like to see more of this in detail, get on the website of Kevin Edwards, who's been doing a lot of really good work in South Wales to highlight just what has gone on in the local authority. And he's reporting to us that a small team of people working consistently over now many years is finally forcing the Welsh Assembly and other senior people in the Welsh Government to actually start to really look at the evidence. And surprise, surprise, we've now got the signs of cracks in the Welsh Assembly, with people saying, well, yes, we recognise that, you know, this doesn't add up. And at the end of the day, the claim by Kevin Edwards and Linda Lewis, which we would fully support, is that the girl in question was kidnapped with false fraudulent papers by the local authority in order to bring her back and put her in a psychiatric unit and tell her that her pain was imaginary. So this seems to be the lying, the cheating, the fobbing off of people. It's a change in people's character, and I'm going to ask the question.
And scare tactics. I mean, somebody gets produced with a document like that. They haven't, you know, it frightens them. They're going to glance at it. It's an official document, and they're just going to go away. So it's, you know, it's highlighting that when people do appear with these kind of official documents saying they're official, that people react. But they react. But now they need to be aware and start reading what's on the document and checking their signatures, checking the names are filled in correct.
Absolutely. And we say, is there a reason that people are no longer behaving in a reasonable professional way? So they're lying, they're cheating, they're bullying. And our answer to this is, of course, yes, people are changing because of the reframing and the common purpose courses that have gone through all parts of the public sector, including the judiciary.
Have you got Kevin's website?
I should have it up on that slide.
If Kevin's there, can you put it up in the chat room, please? And I will announce it in a little while so other viewers can have a look at it, please.
It's a question of staff.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, there we go. Well, just wanted to jump across to Alex Salmon, because I found this a very, very amusing black humour article, but at Scottish Express said there was a growing wave of criticism over Alex Salmon's praise for Vladimir Putin. And we thought we'd just have a look at what all this was about. So the First Minister, Mr. Salmon, said he admired certain aspects of Putin's style and added he's restored a substantial part of Russian pride and that must be a good thing. Now, many people would know that we are not fans of Mr. Salmon, in particular by what he's done to Robert Greene. We'll come on to Robert Greene later, but those were his comments. I don't think there's anything too horrific there, but let's look at the hate as it piles in. So we've got Michael Ostbarko, if I pronounce that right, chairman of the Scottish branch of the Association of Ukrainians. And he says, "You do not praise bullies. This is an outrageous, incredible lack of judgment. Putin is a former KGB agent. Lies are his stock in trade, and he's not interested in democracy." Now, I'm going to have to be a bit tough here and say that I don't think that the chairman of the Scottish branch of the Association of Ukrainians actually understands what's really going on in government or Scotland, because Mr. Salmon is the same man who's created a political and legal dictatorship in Scotland with no separation of powers, and he's controlling the press through intimidation and fear. So I think the Ukrainians in Scotland need to wake up, because I think they're about to find themselves back in a Soviet system. But this one really takes the biscuit. Labour Shadow International Development Secretary Jim Murphy, he called for Mr. Salmon to apologise. He said the First Minister is a serious person, but these are incredible comments in praise of President Putin on the very same day that the world was warning about the build-up of Russian troops and armoured columns. Shows a complete lack of understanding of foreign policy. I'm certain that the First Minister will now want to apologise to the people of Ukraine for this general blunder. Mike?
Yeah, can I hope I'm not interrupting here, but I just say that if there's anybody with a complete lack of understanding of foreign policy, it must be Jim Murphy. That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. The Ukrainians, this interim Ukrainian government, they're supposed to be holding elections in the not too distant future. They've just arrested and beaten the hell out of the main opposition leader. So basically there is going to be no opposition in the coming elections. Ukraine is absolutely already a dictatorship supported by the EU. And Jim Murphy needs to have his head examined, I think.
Well, he does. Well, I added this little comment: a misunderstanding of British foreign policy, a foreign policy designed to destabilise the Ukraine and feed the pieces to EU bankers. So we're watching madness between madmen here. I wanted to finish off with Wicked Willie, Mike, because we couldn't leave him out. So here's Foreign Secretary William Hague, who told MPs in the Commons, Mr. Salmon's comments had horrified people throughout Scotland, throughout the rest of the UK. What did Salmon say? He said he admired certain aspects of Putin's style and he'd restored a substantial part of Russian pride. That's horrific. And this is William Hague, the man who's facilitated violence and bloodshed in Afghanistan, Libya, Syria and Ukraine. So we're now watching in politics in UK, well, it's the asylum, isn't it?
Totally.
Where the lunatics are now leading the asylum.
Let's remember Hague as well, close friends with Jimmy Savile. I've got a couple of photos upstairs of him with Savile.
Well,
so, yeah,
he probably got his Jim will Fix It award or something. So we're in dangerous times because we're seeing sheer lies, criminal activity, paedophilia, and now madness, or at least mad dialogues between politicians. What's the solution? Bradbury Pound, and obviously we need to change our politicians.
Can I just quickly give Kevin's website out?
Indeed,
We said it's CLLR, then kevinedwards.blogspot.co.uk if anyone wants to have a look at the Linda Lewis case and what Brian was mentioning about the court documents. You can check it out on Kevin's website.
Which we recommend.
Yep.
So having ended there on Foreign Secretary William Hague, we're just going to remind people about the deployment of huge British military assets.
Well, as you were talking about a few months ago that Britain were going to send military over to the Baltic region, well, it's now happened. 4 Typhoon jets left the UK and touched down in Lithuania this morning, along with 4 Rafale jets from France, and they landed in Poland. And on Monday, US Airborne Division arrived in Estonia with 150 personnel. There is a NATO exercise starting in May named Spring Storm, and on Monday a Russian Defense Minister, Sergei, I can't pronounce his name, Shoigu, urged his Pentagon counterpart Chuck Hagel to help cool down the rhetoric over Ukraine and described NATO troops massing near Russia borders as unprecedented. And as it says here in the text, speaking to Hagel by phone on Monday, Shoigu classified the growth of NATO activity in Eastern Europe as unprecedented, saying it was accompanied by provocative rhetoric about containing Russia. So they don't. The Russians don't want all this to escalate. And all, as far as I can see, it's us, France, and America are just again banging the drums.
European Union.
Exactly.
So we can imagine if Russian forces had now moved into Ireland, or they were sitting in Calais, what would we be thinking? So the lies from the British government, just horrific. And we've done this several times before, but UK column team very happy to apologise to Russian people and the Ukrainian people for problems that clearly have been created with the connivance of David Cameron, William Hague, Westminster, and of course members of the US Senate.
Yep.
Well, we're just going to return to Scotland for a minute because the prosecutors are doing a good job up there because they're grabbing back millions of pounds of money from crooks. So they say no messing around in Scotland. Anybody who's involved in criminal activity, we're going to smash their organisations and we're going to take back their money. So Solicitor General Leslie Thompson said that the orders have been made under the Proceeds of Crime Act and are aimed at disrupting criminal empires. This young lady has apparently had $720,000 taken away because she was using illegal immigrants. Those who build up criminal businesses are finding we can wreck their ventures by ending their funding streams and hopes of living off the profits of their crimes. Well, we just thought we'd compare that with basically the banks, because nobody in the banks seems to be touched. So we hear about the criminal activity, but what happens is we fine them, and they get a slap on the wrist. Slap on the wrist. No danger of disruption of their criminal empires. So clearly we are being told a pack of lies, whether it's north of the border or south of the border, and dangerous times.
Very much so. Then I just picked this story up just before we came on air. Natural News reporting that there are going to be these medical microchips and they're going to be implanted by 2017 and delivering birth control through wireless communications. I mean, how dangerous is that for starters? Due to the hit medical field in they're due to hit the medical field in 2017, and this new microchip will offer contraceptive services. It will be implanted underneath the skin, where it will start delivering hormones, the same as the current pill or any other birth control. And according to the company who have developed this microchip, the new chips can deliver drugs for up to 5 years. They also boasting that the device can transmit data back to medical professionals such as your doctors, hospitals, and all this is going to be done wirelessly as well. So expect cancer rates to be soaring by then, and this is just another crackdown on
unless people say no. Unless people
this is it. It's going to be. I think I'm going to be sold as so you don't forget your birth control. This is great. It's automatically going to be going into you, and there are going to be some out there who's going to think it's a great idea, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
But we need people to get off seats.
We do, yeah.
So we'll end on Robert Greene. He's now spent he's on his 75th day locked up in prison, and he's shut up in his cell, as are the other prisoners, for 18 hours each day. He's had no proper hearings, no proper representation, no jury, no press, no public. So we just say welcome to the corrupt justice of Alex Salmond, Scotland. This is what the Ukrainians can look forward to. So well done for those Ukrainians north of the border. And let's contrast it with this man, because here he is, Max Clifford, guilty of sexual abuse of young girls, contrary to Robert Greene, who's locked up
for doing nothing
and denied bail. Here's Max Clifford, the criminal,
charged,
released on bail.
Yeah.
So if you're involved in the abuse of young women or children, you can be sure the government is going to be lenient on you. If, like Robert Greene, you've never committed any offence at all, but you're trying to protect abuse victims, you can expect to be locked up. It's madness until you say the aim is to actually destroy the justice system in the country and to ensure that the paedophiles at the highest level of the Scottish government and judicial system and Westminster are protected.
Someone's asking in the chat room, can they send Rob any books? Is that allowed?
Yes, they can.
There you go.
They can. And somebody's pointed out to us that one of the key ministers in post at the time of the Lambeth Children's Home that we talked about yesterday, that's Angel Road, where children were being abused, they would say that Mandelson was still in post. We'll see what the significance of that is in due course.
Yep, that's it. The Health Revolution tonight, is that right?
Yes.
Yep, Health Revolution with the lovely Clive de Carl, 9 o'clock, and I urge people to watch it with some vital information. He always has.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Don't get depressed. Get out there. Action conquers fear. We need more people to do more things.
And Mixcloud for Bill Maloney yesterday, Lou Collins radio show.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.